Welcome back to the Outcomes Income podcast with your hosts, Saif Derzi and Reese Booth. Today we are joined by an extra special guest, Raman Virk. Raman heads up the systems and operations for the largest Japanese automotive manufacturer in the world. Raman holds 3 patents for innovative machinery design that has saved hundreds and thousands of man hours and eliminated production delays. So if you are a business owner and you want to know how to streamline your systems, your processes, this is one you should not miss out on. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast. Raman, welcome to the Outcomes Income podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. So I know we've been looking to book this one in for a while, so I'm really excited for the listeners to listen into just a snapshot of kind of what you do day to day, and just the kind of intricacies that goes into what you do from for obviously doing that for a very large manufacturer of cars, and how their kind of systems and processes and operations look like. So let's get straight into it, Roman. So just tell us a bit about what you do day to day, right as of today, and then kind of how you got into it and transitioned into that kind of career.
Right. So currently I work for Toyota, and I'm part of the Toyota Motor North America engineering division. So basically, what me and my team will do is whenever there's a new model that's going to be launched at a facility in Canada, we'll study the entire factory, look at the change points from A to B in the assembly line, so all the equipment, the processes. All the facilities are required to build the vehicle. So if the vehicle is getting larger, which seems to be the trend, if you look at the Toyota Corolla, what it used to be to what it is today, it's the size of a Camry. And as we get into more hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles, they get heavier because of the batteries. So the actual overhead structure of the facility, all of the infrastructure equipment, they need to then level up. So we'll study that impact. We'll look at the very early designs from the designers coming from Japan, and then we'll start to make the scope for how the factory will need to change. Looking at either modifying the current equipment, overhauling, completely, gutting and replacing key equipment as needed. So whatever it takes to make the new car work, we'll basically make it happen. Of course, there's many challenges with this because as we're making changes, and for those who maybe aren't familiar with the Toyota infrastructure for how it works, so there's a takt time. So takt time is defined as the time it takes for a new car to roll off the end of the assembly line. So every 60 seconds, a brand new car rolls off the line, fully functional.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
So at that point, that's the end of the line. And then basically upstream from that, there are hundreds of processes that are happening, all that are 60 seconds each. So if we can imagine the chain of all the cars that are in process and what needs to happen, from the car being steel coils to being die pressed, painted, welded together, and then all of the interiors and components, engine, starting it up. It's every 60 seconds a brand new car rolls off the line. So all of those processes that are happening, and as we're making change points, we need to make sure that the change points will not disrupt business as usual. So on a daily basis, a plant will make anywhere from 500 to 1,000 cars per day. And it's 2-shift operation. So as those change points are happening, as you can imagine, if we're causing a line stoppage issue, every minute is just money that is being lost. So all of our change points need to be accurate, have good plans in place, and make sure that we just don't disrupt basically what's making all of our paychecks happen. So it's a very difficult situation, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Once things are up and running and things are running smoothly, making change points is something that people want to shy away from, right? So it's our job to get people on board, letting them know the plan that we have in place is going to be sound, good, and then executing that plan with the utmost efficiency and accuracy. So, in a nutshell, that's basically what I have to achieve and what we're up against. And the model cycles are,
Wow.
typically every 3 to 4 years, you'll see a brand new car that's available for the showroom to buy. So, from working backwards from
Yeah.
that launch day is when we'll get involved. So the life cycle can be with 3 years of project work, and we're working intensively every step of the way. And of course, we cannot move that launch date. As soon as the vehicle is launched, it's showcased at auto shows. It's gotten buzz going in the media. It's going to affect share prices. There's no way that we can influence or delay the actual model launch. So again, there's that pressure that adds into it, and we basically there is no option to fail. So that's the kind of stress that me and my team will deal with, and it's a very challenging environment to be in. But of course, you get used to it, and then by working in that environment, you do learn to get creative and work with the resources that you have, to achieve some really incredible things. When I explain this kind of situation to colleagues, or friends of mine who work in other industries, they get stressed listening to it, so it can be
Yeah,
quite
it is.
challenging.
It sounds very, very stressful. I mean, it sounds like it's not necessarily stressful. It's just that they've put a lot of pressure on your shoulders and your team's shoulders to try and basically say there's a hard deadline here. You guys need to perform within that hard deadline because basically you are the line of defense for the company,
E-
effectively, right?
Exactly, and our budget is set very strictly as well. So for Toyota, the profit margin is always set on each vehicle, and then everything else back from that, we have to work within the cost structure. So even in terms of the budget that we get, if we think that it's maybe not enough, we'll have to get creative somewhere else and find a unique solution, and revisit our scope image. Instead of maybe tearing out this piece of equipment, maybe we can modify it in a creative way that can work with the old vehicle and the new vehicle, and then save that money and put it somewhere else where it's necessary. Because as we get the early designs for the vehicle, none of that stuff's really known. So we have to estimate the scope, based on a drawing, and then just our keen intellect, really. So
Wow.
we have to go all in at a very early stage, and then there's really no chance for us to modify the plan after that. It's just ourselves then getting
Wow.
creative. Yeah.
Yeah, and in business, obviously, just or general life as well, there's always a saying of sort of plan six times, execute once. It's really, really important. You plan, plan, plan. The execution should, in theory, be quite straightforward if you've planned for it well enough. And does that translate, I guess, into what you guys do day to day as well?
100%. Yeah. Plan the work the plan. Measure twice, cut once. There's lots of different expressions out there for how to do things
Yeah,
properly. Um, so in terms of our execution, we'll be very hard on ourselves before we even go forward to plant management and stakeholders to let them know this is what we're trying to do.
yeah,
So our internal processes for vetting that plan, we're brutally honest, and we're looking at the worst case scenarios always, to try to
yeah.
see is the plan sound, and can we even go forward with this to even sell it. And just to give you a quick example of some things, so I've mentioned how every minute counts. So for me personally, I was leading a change where we took the factory in Canada, which was making a Corolla vehicle, and we had to transform it to make a RAV4 vehicle, which is the mid-size SUV, which is a very popular vehicle around the world, actually. So to go from a Corolla to a RAV4, it's a completely different change. We had to actually remove assembly lines and install brand new assembly lines. And this is a those are long-term projects. So for this project to happen at, say, a Ford or a GM, a big three, typically they would shut the facility down for 6 to 8 months and then retool. And that's pretty standard. So Toyota does not do that. They will do their change points on the fly so that once it's launch day, there's no downtime. But for this scope project, there was
Wow.
absolutely no way that we'd be able to complete this on the fly. The complete tear out and installation, it was just not possible. So basically, for myself, I created the plan and the image and got buy-in from every step of the way through uh, North American management level, the Japanese level, the local plant management level, up to president. And I personally convinced them to shut down the Toyota plant in Canada for 15 days. and basically explained why it was necessary and that this was not possible. It was possible, but the risk is too high. So that's one thing for
Yeah,
Toyota, is that nothing is impossible. It's just how much risk do we want to tolerate. And I think that's something that translates to business. Anything is possible with enough resources, right? Time, budget, we can
absolutely.
always get more manpower, but there's a cost to that, right? And then what's the risk? So how much risk can we tolerate? So just as an example, that's something that I was able to get off the ground and convince that needed to happen because there was no possible way. And even that
Yeah,
15-day negotiation, working with my contractors. So we'll hire a lot of the contract staff that works with Big Three. Um, because there's a lot of knowledge that transfers with setting up assembly equipment, and having that familiarity is very key. Because as we set up, this equipment that's precision based, it needs to assemble a vehicle within 60 seconds for each process. We want to make sure there's some skill set there for the actual people building that equipment in the shop floor. So talking to many of them, uh, they had said that there was no way that this project would have happened with this timeline anywhere else. And I'm happy to say that we did
wow.
achieve the target. And a complete, basically 1/3 of the factory was torn out and then replaced. And we worked round the clock straight, including myself, to make it happen. But going back to that plan, we were mapping out even how the construction equipment would drive into the facility, drive out of the facility, mapping out the times it would take to do that, the path it would take, removing any overhead interferences. So the other constraint too is an automotive facility has a lot of equipment, a lot of overhanging structures, the lighting, the ventilation systems, and then all the process equipment. Really, really makes very tight openings to even just drive in the big equipment that's required to do that type of major work. So just an example of the planning that's really goes into it. It is quite
Yeah,
intensive.
that's yeah. It's quite a holistic way of looking. You have to look at things quite holistically. It's not very much one dimensional. It's very much how is this going to impact everything, surroundings, other people, time frames. So it's very much project management on
Yes.
steroids. Basically, it very much is project management on steroids. But project management. You can always find solutions for things. Whereas with this, it's like you said, you've got specific knowledge base that you need to be bringing in, which you can't. I'm assuming you can't just replace these people very easily. So there's a lot of demand for them. You've got to time that you've got to time it right when you bring them in. But then you've also got to be thinking about your time frames and internally within the kind of manufacturing units what you're going to be doing differently. So that's from an engineering point of view, from a plant and machinery. So wow, that's a hell of a lot to have to do on a day to day basis. I mean, what do you go home and tell your wife every day? How does that conversation go?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'll recap a lot of the stories that are happening, and I'll have some pictures and videos on my phone, showing some before and after conditions of things. um, and it's pretty incredible. We've gotten in the habit of installing GoPros throughout the facility, do the
Yeah,
time lapse videos,
it's cool.
and it's like watching the pyramids getting built, in 1 minute,
That's
right?
amazing.
And it's
That's
very satisfying to see it all go together. But there are challenges that come into the field. I've had my fair share of things go wrong and having to pivot and find solutions, and a lot of sleepless nights. My hair was black before I started working at Toyota, and it's definitely these grays have been earned, yeah, from doing some pretty interesting and incredible things, and I'm very proud of
a
the
sign of
things that I've
experience.
been able to accomplish. Yeah, and so then
Absolutely.
in taking and building off of this, all these experiences and being in that kind of high stress, high pressure environment to deliver and find creative solutions, that's sort of where I've kind of bridged out, and I'm getting into a new startup called N Industries. Which Safe, as you're aware, which is a company
Yeah.
that's acquiring, sound industrials, smaller, mid-sized companies that are doing some interesting things that maybe are looking for assistance to get to the next level. So I'm kind of diving into that space, and I'm trying to bring this knowledge into those businesses. And I'm really excited to basically take what I've learned and try to apply it to different spaces that could benefit from my experience.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, for those that aren't familiar, so a really good friend of mine, obviously a mutual friend, Jonathan. So he's basically starting up, running N Industries, and it is very much M&A. So it's basically acquisition specifically. So it's mergers, but predominantly I'd say acquisitions more than it is mergers at this stage anyway. So it's the A from M&A. And it's essentially it's trying to look at various industries which might be a bit fragmented. They might need a bit of consolidation, and Raman is coming in from an operations point of view. Now, Raman, do you want to just touch up on that? Because I know, and we'll come on to it from a point of view, from a numbers and investment point of view, but just talking about the operations. So, what are you going to be looking for and looking at doing sort of on a day-to-day basis within sort of an industries?
Right. So there's a number of things. So first, as things start up within the company, just looking at our own internal processes to try to set up some good foundations and practices, so that as it's a decentralized model. So we have a lot of people across different time zones collaborating together. So just trying to make sure that we have a good collaboration space period for that to even start. So I've been kind of helping John out with that right now, sort of a kind of a pre before we get started. Let's iron out a few things. And the reason why that's important, in project management or any kind of project work in general. Everyone knows the results that we need to achieve, but looking at the process, which can go overlooked, and just diving in and starting to do work, that can cause a lot of inefficiencies in general, in my own experience. So just taking the time to look at the process we're going to undergo and the tools we're going to use is an important step, which can get overlooked. And that feeds back to a Toyota principle of PDCA, which is plan, do, check, act. So that's sort of one thing from just as a basic foundation before we get started. After we start
Absolutely.
acquiring companies, there's many things that of course can be done, looking at the Toyota lens. um, the first is looking at the current situation, the current condition. So for N Industries, the thinking is to don't break up a winning team. Let's work with the current management structure that's in place, and really partner up and drive that kind of evolution versus a revolution. And I think by doing that, the first step is really the current condition. What's the current situation? So really diving into, a department by department overview. How is the business running across all the departments, and how are they feeding into the profitability, right? So just looking at the current systems in place, and taking it all in. Don't make any changes right away. Just really analyze what's happening. And once we understand the current situation deeply, from there we can start to map out some ideal conditions and targets. And then as we have our targets in mind, we can start breaking down different situations and different opportunities, and doing some root cause analysis, and trying to filter down to some easy, low hanging fruit. And these are always available, no matter what, especially in manufacturing industries, and really any industry that's looking to get more efficient. If you think of the analogy of boiling full cream, right? And as you're boiling something, there's fat that rises to the top, and you're constantly skimming and skimming it down, right? Um, so with that, of course, looking at the low-hanging fruit. So low-hanging fruit would be things that are low resource, so low manpower, low or zero cost type things that can be done to help improve efficiencies. That can be, process improvement. Is there even a process in place for doing certain things? For the shop floor, there should be some standardized work that's in place. Many times there aren't in small industries because it's based off of the know-how and sort of the tribal knowledge that's been passed down between different people, or you have long-term people working and doing the same thing. But then rarely we can't change up those people When they go on vacation, things will decline in terms of efficiencies. Um, so looking at these type of situations and mapping them out. So process mapping is a very easy, low cost endeavor that can be done. But of course, it's not easy, and you need to have experience doing it, and the way to look at things, break it down, so that that task can be repeatable. The good check for a process map is, can anyone take this instruction list and then repeat it consistently to the same level and quality, once they're trained, right? So again, looking at those
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit
Yeah.
type
Absolutely.
items, and then there's going to be other things that go up the chain in terms of more resource, maybe more time, a little bit of cost. But of course, all of these suggestions or countermeasures need to be judged and assessed in terms of the four kind of true north KPIs that we use in Toyota, which is safety, quality, cost, and then productivity. So looking at all those
Yeah.
kind of four umbrella KPIs, looking at the countermeasures, what makes the most sense, what's the biggest value for dollar, what has the most payback. We can look at the payback in terms of labor savings, any kind of opportunity costs that can be saved as well. So if we have a process which is causing a lot of quality issues, which is costing us a lot of money in scrap, can we implement some what we call poke-yoke, which is a Japanese term for idiot proof. So this concept of poke-yoke,
Okay.
it was it was derived from Toyota. So when Toyota kind of first started, before they got into the auto industry, they made their big money in loom production, which is more for making clothing and
Okay.
fabrics. But the idea of adding some sort of um, mechanism in the machinery that will kind of stop if they see a quality defect, right? And that's something that we try to
Interesting.
build into every step of the process. We'll even build it into how the vehicle is designed. Can a certain clip only go in one way and maybe has a sound so that the person knows that that clip got inserted the right way. My airbag is going to work. That kind of thinking, right? So, and that's really steeped in every step of our
Yeah.
processes. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because I think that we obviously, when we look at processes, generally speaking, you're absolutely right. We always try and have a simple process that's repeatable. So anything that's repeatable can be mapped out. And we look at the McDonald's way of thinking all the time. You need to keep it as easy and as simple as McDonald's. The problem is when you go outside of that scope, you then need to get pretty high paid intellectual people that can think on their feet. So the reality is, if you want people that, and I say this in the nicest way possible, but if you want people that you can replace and build a team out of quite easily, you need people to come in and follow some pretty easy, repeatable processes, like you said. You then have people that kind of sit at the top of that, which might be a bit more managerial or might have certain things that needs more intuition or project management, for example, or operations. So that's a whole other ballgame. And those people are the hard people to get right now because recruitment is very, very difficult, as most business owners probably know and find out. So as much of your business that can be driven by simple processes such as the McDonald methodology, which we always call it, the better, because it means you can then scale the business. The more it's dependent on basically, I guess what we look at is more the intellectual type of processes, or actually not even processes at all, just very much depends on a case by case. Every time you get that, it's more bespoke, so you need obviously more difficult people in terms of from a hiring perspective. Plus, they're going to be more expensive as well. So, yeah, would you kind of agree with that from Toyota's point of view, I guess, as well?
So the so the interesting thing there is, you're right on so many levels. So we want to make the process very simple so that anyone could step in and make this process. So for making let's say a RAV4 versus a Lexus RX, a high quality vehicle, it's the same person doing the processes for both cars, right? And the only difference there is training and also the poke yokes. So getting back to that idea of kind of having the machine having some traceability and checking and error proofing, that's really where the kind of in between solution is. So you're right. Having the let's call it that McDonald's kind of method or team that's working on a very simple process structure that's been well mapped out, and then you have somebody sort of with more knowledge that's overseeing all that. So kind of the in-between layer there is adding that error proofing. And if we can do that, through the way the process is set up, so using that McDonald's analogy, right? And you can probably see a little bit of this too if you go to order something at McDonald's, but how they're assembling
Yeah.
that the food in the back, there's different prompts, there's visualizations, even the tools they have at their stations are very specific for how they're doing things. They have the different toppings that are in front of them. They can only do certain things, and that's also exactly how we do things at Toyota too. When the car is coming in, we only have very specific things in that process that the team member can use and do, and then through training and then visual prompts and then tracing those visual prompts, we can detect when things are being done and out of place, and then stop the line if need be. So adding that error proofing is a really big step, and there's ways to do it on a very simple level, and of course there's things that can be done that's more complicated. Uh, and then the kind of in between route, we can have systems that are flexible that can adapt as things change. So, if we have a small scale manufacturer, they don't want to invest in some high tech, high scale solution. We're looking at something that's more flexible and in between that can work. And then as they say, build different products, or we want to build a different, some different widget into that factory, we can adapt that system and look at it. So the poka-yoke and error proofing is definitely something that that's a it's a known countermeasure that can work, and it can really help kind of bridge that
That's
solution
amazing.
between getting the high skill person that's always necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a real big takeaway, I think, for anyone listening to this is make sure you can have a system that detects errors without humans necessarily having to do that. If possible,
Exactly. Yeah.
not every industry can do it, etc. But if possible, try and let the system pick errors up rather than people, because again, you're going to have to build layers of people, and that's just more costly and obviously not as accurate. But a system picking up errors is the most accurate you're going to have, right? And obviously the most cost effective.
Exactly. And you know what? Here's a real simple one for the listeners out there, which I'm sure no matter what industry you're working in, on the admin side, you're dealing with Excel, right? Excel spreadsheets are probably
Yeah,
used by everybody. And it's cheap. You don't need much training. You can build anything you want very easily, which is great. But the problem is when we collaborate with many people in our team or different groups, people are going to input the wrong thing. You're going to end up a lot of work, reworking the spreadsheet and sending duplicate copies out there. And it becomes a more of a time-consuming task, right? Especially for people that are high cost, that are have very valuable time. Um, you know, Instead of doing the Excel spreadsheet, could we make a very simple app which filters the information that's being input that we need, and then having drop down choice menus? And there's things out there like Microsoft lists, SharePoint lists, Microsoft Teams has a lot of stuff built in. So the input mechanism is error proofed off the bat, so when the person who's entering something only has three choices for this one question, right? You're basically doing some error
yeah,
proofing in the beginning off the start. Very quickly, basically costs you nothing. A lot of these tools are included in your basic Microsoft subscription, which people don't even use, right? Just that's one small example of how we can build in some error proofing thinking into some everyday tasks, right?
yeah. That's amazing. And these little tangible things that you're talking about is probably going to be huge for our listeners just thinking about this and then taking it away and applying it to their business or whatever they're doing. So yeah, that's amazing. So thank you very much for that. So just coming back to kind of, I guess, we'll talk about sort of then industries specifically.
Yep.
So obviously, John's the kind of founder and the visionary behind this all, and obviously he's probably one of the best value investors that I know out there. He's very much a Warren Buffett style value investor, and he specializes in a lot of Japanese companies specifically, and he's averaged some amazing returns. Don't quote me on this, but around sort of, I think, 26 to 28% year on year
Yep.
for the last sort of 10, 15 years. And this is something that he's now, had to make a big, big leap of faith to make the decision to actually go into sort of full time. So yeah, he's doing his first capital raise, and then he's obviously going to be using that capital to go out and acquire these sort of SME type style businesses, which is going to be run by a pretty decent board and group of professionals as well. So I'm an investor in the scheme myself, and I'll also encourage anyone that's looking at doing an investment from a point of view of diversifying maybe away from certain things like property, etc., to maybe look at this, because it's something that I'm definitely quite passionate about. And I think now is a really, really good time for this, specifically with all the disruption we have out there, the disruption in finance costs, etc. There's going to be a lot of companies that need support, whether it's taking them to that next level, whether it's a bit of financial injection, or whether it's, like you said, systems improvement or efficiencies in general. So I'm really, really looking forward to that venture. So anyone interested in that, just reach out and I'll connect you with John directly. But Raman, so just kind of coming back to yourself, if you weren't in Toyota right now, or even in industries, let's just say, just generally, what would be your biggest passion? What would you want to be doing day to day? And that could be anything really at all. But I'm just interested to know, how's your brain wired and ticking, and what would that mean that you would be doing on a day to day basis in terms of your passion, right?
Yeah, so well, I mean, let's say if I wasn't working with N or with Toyota, I would still be using this sort of skill set to do some sort of improvement. Probably directed at my community, or looking at our local society, right? So I'd probably get involved, looking at maybe some nonprofit groups to see kind of where I can maybe have some big impact to help just make things better for our community and society on a daily basis, right? So that's probably what I would get into.
Yeah,
I'd look to see where I could just make a difference and just make things better, because I think a lot of companies out there, there's a lot of opportunities to make things more efficient, and it's overlooked quite a bit, because of, again, just the management practices that are in place. And we've been doing things this way for a certain number of years, and why change it up, right? So I'd probably look at approaching some
yeah,
of those things out there, and just probably do some freelance work, and just trying to get involved to make things better. Honestly, that could be nonprofits, charities. Um, my wife has worked with
that's
nonprofits
a
quite a bit, so I'd probably use that connection to try to get in front of some people, and just see how I could help, and then let them know what I could offer for their services, and just try to make things better,
sure.
really.
That's a real testament to your passion for doing this, and your desire for doing this. So that's really, really amazing. And we need more people like you in our life, in our world, I guess, as well, because you are the types of people that really do support, like you said, communities, companies, and it will have, directly or indirectly, will have an impact on a lot of people's lives, whether it's people working within the company, whether it's the customers of that company, etc. So yeah, we need more of you in the world for sure. So we're coming on to the kind of last segment of the episode. So one thing we always ask, and we get all sorts of types of answers to this question, is what's one tangible piece of advice that people can take away today to help them create an income? And because obviously the name of the podcast is The Outcomes Income. And that could be anything. That could be something in your field from an efficiency point of view. You can say whatever you want. So yeah, over to you, Raman, to take away.
That's an interesting question. So I'd say, depending on what you're doing, there's some opportunities out there to look at AI, and how AI could actually uh, make things easier for your current job. And I think that's something that's interesting. So it's almost like a virtual assistant, right? Things like ChatGPT, and there's other things out there. I've actually experimented with them quite a bit. I think that's something that, as kind of knowledge workers, that'll become more commonplace. And if you can learn how to leverage AI to maybe speed things up in your current job, that might free up some time for yourself to do something on the side. And I think that's something that people might be interested in doing, right? So if you can find ways to make
Yeah.
your job easier, and spend less time on doing the things that are more time consuming, with that added time that you would now have, can you direct that elsewhere? Maybe it's spending more time in your investments, looking at having that extra time to research and read up on articles and follow companies or discover new companies like end industries, um, or to maybe start some other side venture that you've been thinking about. Maybe I always liked woodworking, and now I got some more free time. I can start building some furniture in my garage. I mean, I know actually some people that have done that and have actually done things quite successfully. Not through AI specifically, but through using some automations in their current job to free up time. So maybe something
Yeah.
to consider.
Some amazing. Yeah, that's a really really good piece of advice for a lot of people. Is less is more. So if you can consolidate what you're doing and get the same output, but obviously put in less input, then that input can go to other things of your life or business or anything like that at all, which is amazing. So Rowan, that's been it's been a really really good podcast. I appreciate you have a massive time difference because you're actually based out in Canada. So thank you very much for making the time to jump on today. I'm really really excited for end industries and where that's going to go, and having people like yourself on board is going to really really sort of leapfrog it even further than where it would be if it was just sort of just John. So I think that's a really really good thing that John's done, is assembled such an amazing professional team of boards and directors and things like that can actually come together and help that growth. So anyone looking to sell a company or sell a business, specifically within various sort of manufacturing industries, etc., or looking to invest into something different that's backed by some really really credible amazing knowledge, then reach out to me. I'll introduce you to John, and hopefully there's a long-term investment future there. So Raman, thank you very much. We love having you on, and hopefully if anyone's listening to this, if they want to get in touch with you, we can drop your details into the show notes as well.
For sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to discuss with anybody. And just one last real quick plug for John himself. Working with
Sure.
industries and getting to know him.
Absolutely.
Very very interesting guy, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him and work with him. And I think our thoughts and mindset aligns quite a lot, to an eerie amount. And I think there's a really good person that's kind of leading the group and the team, and I'm really excited just to take things further.
Definitely. So yeah, as I said, I'll be dropping all the contact details as well for everyone into the show notes. So if they want to reach out to yourself, to John, even if they want to reach out to me privately and I can kind of talk it through them and then do an introduction, happy to do so. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Now that concludes the episode with Raman Virk, and what an episode that was. That's certainly been one of the biggest learning curves for me and in general for our business. So if you've been enjoying these, please like, share and subscribe. We have some amazing guests coming on as ever, and as we always say, we do this for free for the love of podcasting and for everyone's sake, to share valuable free information from lots of different people all around the world. So please like, share, subscribe, and just share this with friends, family, anyone you think could benefit from it.